Good afternoon and welcome to the May edition of Mark's Modern Workplace. We've got tons to get through today, so I will kind of launch straight into it. Here's our agenda. So as always, we'll start off with our kind of kickoff and curiosity. So we'll review the question from last month, and then I'll launch a new poll. Then we'll look at Copilot Corner, which this month is all going to be around Copilot Cowork. Then we've got a spotlight session where we're going to look at a tool called Enforcer. It's one of our technical experts, Nigel Yardley. Then we've brought back Modern Work Hacks this month. So we'll look at an area of kind of Microsoft technology that isn't used maybe as much as it should be, and I'll give you some a viewpoint as to how you can use that, and maybe it will be used a bit more as a result. And then finally, we're going to go into Tech SOS, which is going to be around how to activate the likes of Claude and Cowork in your environment, assuming you've got a premium Copilot license. So let's start with our kickoff and curiosity. So last month we asked what sort of impact do you think AI will have on a child's education, and here are the results. And I think that's relatively positive in general, somewhat positive, you might say. 50% of people voting that. I voted for that myself, but also quite a lot in the somewhat negative camp. I think for the kind of educators that are on this call, I think that's it's going to be the conundrum, I guess, over the next kind of few years, as to how schools utilize AI in the classroom. It feels like the sort of thing that can't be ignored, but it also feels like the sort of thing that has to be really carefully thought about. So we'll see how that looks in a few years, I guess, and maybe we can revisit it. For the vote this month, I just want to understand which of these tools. So these are all Microsoft tools. Have you actually opened, and even better, used? So please vote. You can vote on multiple options, but it'd be interesting to see kind of what people are using, if anything. And you can obviously vote on nothing if you want, I think. So we'll see what the votes come in on that. And that will part of the reason I'm doing this is it's going to inform what we can do, what we cover in future sessions. So I'll let that vote kind of crack on in the background, and we'll move to Copilot Corner. So in this month's Copilot Corner, I wanted to touch upon probably the biggest thing to happen to Copilot over the last few months, and that is the implementation of Cowork. For those that can't vote for anything, select other, and we'll take that as a none. So Cowork is brand new, and it represents a big impact on Copilot, and a big change for how Copilot is going to operate, for two reasons. The first is that it demonstrates Microsoft's new collaboration with Anthropic and their Claude AI models. Previously, Copilot was very much underpinned by ChatGPT. So Microsoft owned a stake in OpenAI. They had an exclusivity agreement with OpenAI to utilize their models. They don't have that exclusivity agreement anymore, but they still absolutely do utilize ChatGPT models. So if you've used Copilot recently, you may have noticed that you can now use GPT 5.5 in Copilot, which is ChatGPT's latest model. Came out about 2 weeks ago. It was available on Copilot within 24 hours of release. So that's great. But what Microsoft are now looking to do is offer, I guess, best of breed AI, so that you can pick the right model for the right situation and not be limited purely to the GPT models. And as a result of that, you can now utilize Claude in Copilot. So that is surfaced in a number of places. It's surfaced in Copilot Chat, where you can use Claude Opus, which is their biggest and greatest model. You can also use it in places like Excel and PowerPoint. But what this has also brought to the table is Cowork. So Cowork is a Claude product. It's called Claude Cowork in Claude, and now it is Copilot Cowork. And what it allows you to do is a whole number of things. I'm going to try and demonstrate over the next 10 minutes some use cases for this. But as you can see from these bullet points, it's an AI that can actually do things. Now, that's maybe unfair on Copilot. Copilot can absolutely do things, and there are agents built within Copilot to help you do those. But Cowork can do and execute multiple things all within the same chat. And actually do the work rather than kind of suggest how you do it. So in standard Copilot chat, if I'm asking it to prepare me for a meeting, it will be able to produce a load of stuff to help me prepare for that meeting, but it's still just going to be bullet points around, oh well, you spoke about this, or this was what you mentioned in the last email, or whatever else, and then I have to kind of go away and produce whatever documents it might that I get ideas to produce based on that response. But Copilot off that prompt is not going to create any of that stuff for me. It could if I continue to prompt it, but it's not going to straight away. Cowork absolutely will. It spans my entire suite, as does kind of all the Copilot. So it can access my emails, my calendar, my files, my Teams conversations, all within a single prompt. But where it becomes really clever is it can link multiple steps into one. So if I tell it to do something, it will infer what I want from my request, and it will be able to perform multiple steps in which to kind of give me the best possible response. So if I use Cowork to say prepare me for a meeting, and that meeting might be to discuss a report that I'd written for a customer or whatever else, or it might be a quarterly business review, or whatever the context is, then Cowork will produce all of the material I need to be able to deliver that meeting effectively, including PowerPoint decks, Excel spreadsheets, can organize the meeting and send a meeting invite, can create the agenda, all of that, all within one prompt, which is a huge time saver. So if we think of Copilot as our kind of personal assistant, but someone, a question and answer session, Cowork is very much more a kind of colleague that I can give a piece of work to, and then I can kind of step away and come back in half an hour and see how they've got on. It will guide itself in a way that Copilot simply doesn't do. And as we can see in these bullet points, it will produce Word and Excel and PowerPoint decks and PDFs and whatever I want. It can also operate on a schedule, which is really clever. So you can schedule it to do certain tasks every day, and it will do those. So that might be to clean up a calendar, or to clean up your inbox, or to send an email to a certain person every day, or to summarize what you need to do, or whatever else. It can do all of that within the session, and it's really adaptable. So Copilot has memories, and we can give it memories, and we can tell it stuff to remember. Cowork has skills. So we can really tailor it to how we want, and we can use Cowork to help us build these skills. So I'm going to do that now in this first video. So here I am, and I'm going to ask it to create a sound like me skill. So I've told it to look at the last 2,000 emails I've sent and create a skill that will therefore make my future my future projects sound like me. So now that I've done that, I can access my skills in Cowork. I can also access them in places like PowerPoint. And now I'm going to get it to write an email using that sound like me skill. And as a result, I'll get an email content that sounds much more like me and much less like AI. One of the complaints I often get when it comes to kind of working with Copilot is that people can often feel that still like email responses and documents to a certain extent don't necessarily quite capture the person and can still sound and look like they've been produced by AI. So producing skills like this and then feeding them back in can really mitigate that. And you can create skills for kind of anything you can think of, but that's a good starter for 10, something around kind of making it sound like you. So we've built our skill now. The next thing I want to do is organize my week. So I'm going to go to Cowork. It's an agent within the Copilot app. and I'm going to tell it, that I want it to organize my diary. So if you're like me, you might be stuck in back-to-back meetings more days than not. To-do list keeps growing, and you struggle to find time to actually get work done. So this is where Cowork can come in. It connects with Work IQ, which is Microsoft's kind of memory layer. So it understands your schedule, can identify what meetings really matter. So when I prompt it, first it gives me a clear view of what my week looks like. So how many meetings I've got, where the conflicts are, how much time is already booked. And before it takes any action to kind of mitigate this, it checks in with me. So it asks me what my goals are for the week, what I want to prioritize, what meetings might be low value, and what absolutely can't be moved. And based on that, it highlights conflicts and recommends what I should accept, decline, or reschedule. But it always puts me in control. So nothing ever happens without my approval. But once I give it the go ahead, it'll take care of the changes for me. And it doesn't stop there. So Cowork continues working in the background. So for example, it can draft a follow-up email to the meeting organizer, ready for me to review and send within the chat. It can also find space in this new cleaner calendar that it's created and suggest time for things like focus work, which I can then book in instantly. And if I then notice when looking at that calendar view that I've got an important meeting coming up, then as I've already alluded to, I can ask it to prepare me, and it's going to pull together objectives and key metrics and attendee insights into a single prep document like the one we see on screen now. So it's really, really clever because it allows me to interact with my world in a way that Copilot simply couldn't do. Another example is this. So I've got a big update coming up for my FIG engineering team. The engineering team has made a breakthrough in the product that we sell, and they want to launch version 2 as a result of this as soon as possible. So they're ready, but me in my marketing world, I'm not ready. So I want to use Cowork to help me put the plan together and help partner with me on this launch. So I enter my prompt, and I'm asking it to do 3 things. First, I need to grab some time with Jason to finalize the value proposition. Second, I need to complete a brief to capture all the launch details. And third, I need to start building a PowerPoint deck to pitch this to the exec team. Now, Cowork will start working on each of these tasks in parallel. And again, it's using Work IQ to find relevant data, infer how I work, and create high quality artifacts. For example, here it's found multiple people in the business, and it recommends the right one to me because it knows that I've worked with this person in the past. So now that it knows the right person, it can draft the email. Cowork explains its reason as it goes. It solidifies the tasks I'm working on, and it adds them to the progress tracker in the corner. Then we get a status update. Cowork's just found a 30-minute window that works for Jason and me, pulled in the relevant work context, and is now ready to start building the content I asked for. So here's the meeting invite. I can edit directly, and then I can hit create and it'll send it. I can also interact with Cowork while it's still working. So speaking of which, I've just realized I need to keep finance in the loop. So I'll send another prompt asking Cowork to help email my colleague and let them know that this is coming their way. So, and there we go. There's that email. So now Cowork is putting together the PowerPoint and Word doc and working through the email I want to send. And the really cool thing is that as each of these tasks are completed, Cowork gives us the output right away, just like we saw with that meeting invite earlier. So we'll see the Word document come through, and Cowork puts it in the output folder, and soon after the PowerPoint doc is ready. So here's the draft email to the finance person so they can start crunching the numbers. Again, I can edit any of the details, and when I'm ready, I just click send. So that's everything we asked for. So now we get a wrap up, a full summary of everything Copilot Cowork executed for us. And let's just take a quick look at the PowerPoint it created. And so now I can scan through and make sure that this PowerPoint deck is exactly as I want it. Now, this is a fairly generic style, but if as a business we've got a template that we want it to work to or anything like that, then it can absolutely do that. So now it's time for me to head into my meeting. And in the meantime, it's up to finance to keep moving this particular project forward. And that, in a nutshell, is Cowork. Strongly recommend you take a look at it. I think it's going to be an absolute game changer for how we utilize AI moving forward. Right, on to something completely different and into our spotlight session for the month. So at this point, I'd like to welcome Nigel onto the webinar. Good afternoon, Nigel. How you doing?
Hi, Mark.
Good. Right. So on to Enforcer, which is what we want to talk about today. So for anyone who hasn't come across Enforcer, can you give us the elevator pitch? What problem does it solve and who's it for?
So Enforcer, the beauty of it is it's all across all different industries, whether it's commercial, education, government. It has a role in every type of organization. So Enforcer, in a nutshell, it's to implement and maintain security within a 365 tenant. So the challenge that a lot of people exist, the whole business nowadays runs off 365. The problem with that is there's about at least a dozen different admin consoles within 365. So what Enforcer does is it allows us to put out a baseline set of policies across all the different components of 365, but then more importantly, be able for us to manage that and monitor that on a single pane of glass, and to highlight misconfigurations, any changes that occur. It gives us a very easy portal to use to be able to see all that. So what we say when we're talking about a baseline, so a lot of different vendors have baselines as such, along CIS, Cyber Essentials, Microsoft, their own. So what we use our Enforcer system for is we've come up with a set of baselines, which several different baselines depending on the organization, the size and the industry, which is a merging of all the CIS, Cyber Essentials, Microsoft Secure Score, but critically, those baselines have used our real world knowledge to be able to apply them across multiple different tenants in different business types and not completely make it unusable. So this is a key bit of the baselines is, they are built upon real world experience.
And this launched last year. So how has it evolved since launch?
So from the initial time, so originally, obviously, the baselines that we were putting out were very much pushed them out, and it was a mechanism of applying baselines to tenants. Where it's developed more is now it comes in with a lot of assessments, so we can compare, we can capture the state of security in a tenant initially, and then we can report back on where the tenant is now. But we can also do comparisons between CIS and how well it aligns to CIS or Cyber Essentials. So there's a lot more reporting mechanisms built in. Another key bit, as you've been talking about before, is there's assessments relating to Copilot now, which are built in to ensure that the organizations, if they are to use Copilot, that it will work, everything's in place for it.
Nice. So I'm right in saying Enforce is built around 4 pillars, yeah? Policy standardization, automated deployment, backup and restore, and compliance reporting. So which of those tends to be the biggest eye-opener for clients when we kind of set this loose?
From my point of view, the biggest, which is more use, would be around one of the really clever functions it's got is for policy drift detection. So by that, what I mean is previously, a lot of the time you would apply policies, you'd make changes to bring yourself in line with Cyber Essentials, but then over the weeks, months and year afterwards, those policies are changed. Genuinely, some of them could be changed genuinely by IT administrators, etc. So one of the clever mechanisms is it will detect any policy drift, and then we can alert on that. And we can even alert to the point where it will send out a notification, an email, and basically say this policy was changed by this person from this setting to this setting at this time. And obviously that's a huge bit. So now we're at the point where when we're doing a Cyber Essentials renewal a year later, for example, we haven't got to look through all the 12 different admin portals we've got, look for all the changes that have happened. We would have had to check every single setting through over again. But now we can simply just go to that change log to ensure that what we put in the system is still there.
I see. So I guess that means that if you're wanting Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus certification or something else, having Enforcer kind of means that you're going to hit it, or you're a good way towards it. How does that look?
Yeah, certainly. So, like I say, Cyber Essentials is a big part. And yeah, we've used our experience of helping customers reach Cyber Essentials, and we've fed all that into the Enforcer system. Obviously, Cyber Essentials, there is more to it than that. Obviously, you have policies, internal policies, you have compliance of third-party software, which the Enforcer product won't do. But in terms of the security of the 365 tenant and enter, yes, the policies we put in are specifically designed to work with the Cyber Essential requirements.
Nice. Okay. And outside of, I guess, drift, what other reasons would there be if I'm a business who maybe was thinking of just doing, set up my Intune policies and conditional access policies and whatnot manually, or thinking of doing so? Why should I use Enforcer instead?
So the main thing, obviously, as I've covered, is you can always do them manually, but time consuming. So we historically, like every organization, we would have put all these policies in manually. So we using the tool, it has literally reduced down the time from maybe a day, 5 days to a day. So it's at least a quarter of the time now. But more importantly, it's taken the human error element away from it. So even when you do things manually, can you ensure that every setting is right and you have, every single bit of it is done exactly as it should be? So that's a key bit to using a tool like this, is it ensures that it's a consistent setup all the way across.
I see. Nice. And for someone who wants to understand their current posture, what does the security baseline review involve?
Okay, so very simple. So to actually have a look at your existing environment, what we can do, we can send out a link, which basically you would just log into using your global admin account. The product uses a Microsoft Graph to just read information. So it doesn't need write access through Graph, it is purely read, but you do need to enter a GA credentials in order to install the Graph component. When you enter that into the link that we can send out, that expires after 2 days, but we never see that global admin credentials. It is purely creating a Graph instance.
I see. And then that gives a review there. And what does that review contain?
Yeah, so from that review, we can then, like I say, see how your security posture currently is. We can see the state of MFA across your estate, all the baselines. So the baselines we have numerous different baselines dependent on your type of organization. So that might be a standard baseline or premium baseline. By that, we mean, do you use an Entra P1 license, or do you use Intune? Going forwards, do you use DLP? So, for example, if you've got Microsoft 365 Business Premium licensing, you're entitled to obviously DLP basic functionality. You'd need E5 for the higher levels of the usage of DLP. But depending on what you have in your tenant, we apply a different baseline that specifically is targeted to what you're licensed to do. So from that, we can then, once we've added your tenant in, we can then produce a report that says how well you align to it and what we feel we can set to improve our security posture.
Understood. Very good. And would you believe it? We have an offer. So if you've just heard all of that and you've gone, oh, I'm not sure what my security posture looks like, but I'd like to know, then we can do this for free for you. So just email info@, or you can comment in the chat, and we'll set up one of those free security baselines. As Nigel mentioned, it's dead easy to set up, and it will get you a report that you can kind of do with as you will. Thanks very much for the time, Nigel. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right, on to modern work hacks. And this month I wanted to cover a tool that doesn't get covered all that often. It's put a spotlight on something called Microsoft Loop. So if you've never opened it, you're not alone. But hopefully once you see what it does, you'll start spotting use cases more often and therefore start using it. So I'm going to focus on kind of five areas of this solution. First up, Loop is built for real-time co-creation. So pages and components update live for everyone at the same time. So it's kind of like, when you share a Word document with people, you see those updates live. This is that, but across multiple streams. So it's no more guessing around whether the task list that you've got in front of you is the latest version of it. There's no more kind of merging people's edits into a project plan at the end of the day. Everyone kind of sees the same thing the moment it changes. And these components are portable. So once I create a loop component, and that can be a task tracker or a voting table or whatever it might be, I can paste that list, that table, that node into Teams, into Outlook, into Word, into OneNote, and it will stay synced. So if one person changes it from Outlook, it will update for everybody. If another person changes it in Teams, same effect. So we're able to keep things kind of in line and up to date. And this becomes clever when we look at how we can then do this in workspaces. So you can create all these kind of individual loop components, but you can also create a loop workspace. So if you go to loop.microsoft.com, you can access this. And then you can create like project pages, and you can create multiple for a project, and you can build these up with these components, and therefore everything stays up to date. And it gives you a kind of a central repository to manage your project. But if you need to break out an element of that project management, so the task list, for example, or you want people outside the project to vote on solutions that you may be talking around, then you can break that component out, throw it in Teams, and people can vote on it and whatnot. It makes it really easy to keep up to date with things. So a use case that I use quite a lot is I have a weekly meeting with the team, and we might agree on kind of what tasks we want to do for that week, but it's all pretty static. And if we want to kind of go and find what we'd agreed on task wise, I have to go and look in the meeting notes, produce guide Copilot to kind of see. So now what I do is we have a page in Loop, and I share the Loop component for the task list in the chat of the meeting, and then people can update it from there, and it will update in our workplace in Loop. And so as it updates, I can see that, and then when we have the follow-up meeting the next week, the list is already there up to date because I put it in the chat prior. So we can always kind of see where everyone's up to without having to kind of dig around 1,000,001 documents and meetings and emails and all the rest of it. So it's really good for keeping up to date. Now, of course, it wouldn't be a Microsoft tool if Copilot wasn't built in. So it is. So we can use Copilot to help us do things like idea generation or summarize what's going on in a project, and it will do that. And it works everywhere. So whether you're on the web or you're on mobile, you can utilize it. So really recommend you have a look if you haven't already. Loop.microsoft.com, and it's free. Well, it comes with your Microsoft license. Right. Okay. So very quickly, we're going to do a quick Tech SOS, and that Tech SOS is going to be around something that I've come across a lot over the last few weeks. Well, where is Claude and Cowork in Copilot? Why can't I see them? So the bad news is it's not turned on by default. You need to switch it on. And Cowork is a frontier agent. What that means is it's in kind of beta mode. So again, it's not available to everybody. You have to turn on frontier mode to get access to it, and indeed a load of other kind of latest and greatest stuff from Microsoft. So I'm going to show you how. So firstly, if you're an admin, you can get to it through this link, and this will take you straight to the place that you want to be at. So to do this first bit, this is where that link that I've just sent you takes me, and I need to scroll down and look for this AI providers as a sub-processor, and I need to make sure that Anthropic is turned on. So to do that, you have to accept an agreement. It's no great shakes, but you still bound by Microsoft's policies around data protection and all the rest of it. But they're making all users or all tenants sign up to agree to this as a separate thing. So you turn that on first. You can give access to all users or a subset of users, but that means you've now surfaced Claude across the environment. So now you'll be able to see it in Researcher, in Excel, in PowerPoint, etc. The second thing you need to do to get Cowork and all the other Frontier models is turn on Copilot Frontier. So you click on Copilot Frontier, you tell it who you want to give access to. So again, you can give it to all users or a subset of users. And once you've turned those two features on, you'll be able to access all the Claude models and you'll be able to access Cowork. Right, and with that, bang on time, this is weird for me, we are done. So I really hope this provided some good insight for you and you've enjoyed it. If you have, please register now for the next session, which is on the 18th of June. For those watching us on YouTube, all the links for everything that we just discussed will be in the description. So thanks again. See you next month, and hope we all enjoy the good weather this weekend. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.